For many years, Hot Chili was one of those copper companies that had many of the ingredients investors like in a junior mining story. It had size, copper, gold, a project in Chile, and it had a pre-feasibility study and a long-term vision. But there was always one big question. Could this project really become a mine? That question is important because many mining projects look good on paper but never reach construction. They publish resources, studies, they have big numbers, but then they face the real world problems. Permits, water, capex financing, politics and communities, and always the risk in construction. And in some of these topics is where many projects stop. Hot Chili has been, in many ways, a survivor. It has moved Costa Fuego forward during difficult years for copper juniors. It has reduced risk and keep working when the market was not paying much attention. But now the company is entering a new phase. The goal is not longer to sell Costa Fuego as a dream. The goal is to move towards construction. And in this interview, the key message is really clear. The story has changed because of Verde. Let's start.
Welcome, mining lovers. This is Charlano de Minas, the Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment. Now, in English. Do you want to learn? Subscribe. Do you want more content in English? Leave us a comment. The episode is about to start.
Welcome, mining lovers. This is Charlando de Minas, the Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment, today in English. This is a summary of the original interview in Spanish with Jose Ignacio Silva from Hot Chili. This is not a literal translation. If you want to watch the full original interview, you will find the link in the description. The goal of this conversation, of this summary, is to organize the conversation, explain the key ideas, and help investors understand what has changed in the company. Because the real story there is not only that Hot Chili has drilled good holes, the real story is that those holes may change the development plan of Costa Fuego. To understand this interview, we need to start with the previous situation. Costa Fuego already had a pre-feasibility study. That study showed a large copper-gold project with around 20 years of mine life, a strong copper equivalent production, and a much better technical base than in early years. The project was not longer only an exploration idea, it was becoming a more mature development aspect. But there was a problem. The market was still not giving the project the valuation that management believed it deserved, and the only reason was size of the capex. A project with an initial capex around $1.2 billion is not easy for a junior company to finance, and a junior company that in that time only had a market cap of 100 or 150 million. So the investors could say, yes, the project is large, yes, the resource is interesting, yes, the copper market needs a new supply, but how can a junior build this? This is why Verde is so important. Verde may improve the first phase, it might improve the return, it might reduce the payback, it might add mine life, and it might make the whole project easier to finance. Jose Ignacio explained that Hot Chili recently raised around 28 million US dollars or around 40 million Australian dollars, mainly with the support from existing investors. He also explained that the share price had increased strongly since the previous interview. So the company is now in a stronger position than 1 year ago. But the most important point is not the share price. The most important point is that Hot Chili now has more options. The company has shareholders such as Glencore, GS Group, Blue Spec, retail investor, and institutional investor. It also has Bank of Montreal working as a financial advisor. This matters because Hot Chili is not longer only thinking about exploration capital, it is thinking about a project finance, a strategic partner, and eventually construction. Jose Ignacio was very clear about the company's ambition. Hot Chili wants to stop selling the project as a dream. The company wants to become real. In his view, the company has crossed a threshold and it's no longer just a junior exploration company. It is a development company trying to become a mining producing company. That is why the environmental impact study is such an important milestone. Once this study is submitted, the company can move closer to project finance, and after project finance, it can start thinking seriously about construction. In other words, the company is trying to move from technical validation to permitting, from permitting to financing, and from financing to construction. But then came La Verde. La Verde is a copper porphyrin, and according to Jose Ignacio, it is exposed at surface. This is really important. In copper mining, a large porphyrin can be valued because of scale, but a higher grade zone near surface can be even more valuable because it can improve the first years of a mine plan. It can help the project generate more cash earlier. It can reduce the payback period. It can improve the internal return of rate, and it can make the project much more attractive for financiers. Jose Ignacio explained that Hot Chili had been trying to secure La Verde for many years, and it was not easy. The mining property was fragmented. There were many owners and many negotiations going on. But when the company finally completed the agreement in 2024, they started drilling quickly, and the results were strong. One of the most important holes was more than 700 meters grading around 0.42% copper equivalent close to surface. For a large copper porphyrin system, that is a relevant result. But the most interesting part is that the hole also includes higher grade zones. Jose Ignacio mentioned intervals such as 62 meters and more than 1% copper equivalent, and another high grade zones starting from south depth. He used a very simple image. These higher grade zones are like a sponge of sugar in the financial model. The project already had size, but if you add a high grade material near surface, the economic model can improve a lot. That is why La Verde might be so important for Costa Fuego. At first, Hot Chili was thinking about La Verde as a second phase. The idea was to continue with Costa Fuego's plan and later at La Verde. But when the company looked at the numbers, management began to see that La Verde could have a much larger impact. So they asked a simple question. What happens if we include La Verde in the same project? What happens if we add this material to the current PF's model? According to Jose Ignacio, the economics could improve significantly. He was careful and he did not give a new official study, but he repeated that the final numbers still need to come from a formal work. But he said also that the management believed that the current NPV of around 1.2 billion could move easier, close to $2 billion. He also said that the internal rate of return could move from 20 to 30, and the mine life could increase by around 8 to 10 years. Also, the payback could be also reduced. But also think that the copper price has improved since the previous PFS, and this project is very sensitive to copper prices. This is not yet a new official PFS. That distinction is important. These are management expectations, but not final published numbers. Investors need to wait for the updated study. But the reason for the change in strategy is clear. If the project can become much stronger by including La Verde, then it might make sense to delay the environmental submission by some months and submit a better project later. This is a trade-off. Adding La Verde means more environmental baseline work. La Verde is about 35 kilometers away, and not all baseline studies were complete for that area. So it will create some delay, but in exchange the project might become much stronger. Jose Ignacio said that the delay might be around 1 or 2 quarters, but in exchange the company could have a project with better financial numbers, better return, longer mine life, and a shorter payback. There is another important concept: freezing the project. In mining, a project can be grown forever. You can always keep drilling. You can always add more targets. You can always say that the next discovery may improve the plan. But if you want to build a mine, at some point you need to stop. You need to define phase one. You need to close the design. You need to prepare the environmental impact study. You need to say, this is the project that we want to permit. If you never freeze the project, you never build a mine. That is the tension Hot Chili is facing. La Verde is still growing. It might continue to deliver good results or even better results, but the company cannot wait forever. Jose Ignacio explained that La Verde will be included in phase one, but the company also needs to freeze this first phase and move forward. Further expansion can come later, but the first mine plan needs to be defined. That first phase now seems to be focused on Productora and La Verde. Cortadera remains important, but the discussion around Cortadera and its capex can be pushed further into the future. This is another key point. If Productora and La Verde can support a stronger phase one, Hot Chili may not need to spend capital on Cortadera as early as the old plan. That could improve the first phase and make the project more financeable. This is why La Verde is not just an exploration success. It might change the capital sequence of the project, it might change the mine plan, and it might change the financing discussion. The timeline is now also clearer. Hot Chili expects to publish a La Verde resource and reserve around the middle of the year. The company expects to update the PFS by the end of the year. Then the environmental impact study is expected around the end of the first quarter of 2027. And after that, the project finance and construction decision will come later, possibly around 2028 or 2029, depending on permits, financing, and the final resolution. So, this is not a story of immediate production. Hot Chili is still a development company, but the next 12 to 24 months are very important because they can define whether Costa Fuego becomes a much stronger project than the one presented in the previous PFS. The next major topic in the interview was water. And in Chile, water is not a secondary issue. Water is central to mining. You cannot build a large mine or a large copper mine without water. But society does not want projects to use river water or continental water, so mining companies need to find other solutions. And in many cases, that solutions, if possible, is seawater. Hot Chili has been working on water infrastructure for many years. Jose Ignacio explained it that the company has had concessions and easements from the coast to the project area since around 2015. The original reason was simple. Costa Fuego will need water, but once the company secured the first phase of the water infrastructure and obtained the maritime concession, management realized that this could be more than infrastructure for their mine. It could be monetized. Hot Chili's water was created because Costa Fuego needs water. The first client, it will be Hot Chili itself, but the region might need much more water in the future. The Huasco Valley and the broader region around the Andes, both on the Chilean side and on the Argentinian side, could become one of the most important copper regions in the world over the next decades. There are very large copper projects in the broader area. They will need water. And if society does not accept the use of continental water, then those projects will need seawater infrastructure. Jose Ignacio made an interesting point about Argentina. If Argentina projects need seawater, going to the Atlantic side is extremely far. From a capital cost point of view, the Chilean side might be more logical solution for water port access. This creates a strategic opportunity for Hot Chili. The first phase of the water project could supply around 500 liters per second of seawater for Costa Fuego, with an estimated capex around of 151 million US dollars. Later phases could increase capacity and supply other mining projects in the region. The bigger vision is to build a large water distribution network. This matters for two reasons. First, it can help Hot Chili finance Costa Fuego, and second, it can create a better social and regional solution. Local communities do not want 5 different pipelines crossing the area. A large shared infrastructure system might be much more efficient, might reduce the physical footprint, and might allow the mining industry to share infrastructure in a more rational way. Jose Ignacio explained as well that Hot Chili is opening to sharing part of the water business. The company does not need to own 100% of everything. The idea is to structure a business where different mining companies can access water, where Hot Chili can monetize the infrastructure, and where part of the water solution can also benefit communities in the dry valley. This is one of the most interesting parts of the investment case. The water project is not just a cost, it might become a strategic asset. It might help with project finance, it will bring partners, and it might make Costa Fuego more acceptable from a social point of view because the water will not use the river water or the continental water. In the interview, Jose Ignacio confirmed that the company is already in conversation with several relevant actors in the region. He also mentioned that it had MOUs with several partners, although he could not give details because of those agreements are confidential. So investors should not assume that the water business is already fully monetized, that it's not, but it's clearly part of the financial strategy. The financing of the first water phase is still being studied. The $151 million could be included as part of the mining project capex, or it could be financed through a tariff system where the water company builds the infrastructure and Costa Fuego pays the water through the operating costs. This is similar than other larger infrastructure services in mining, such as power lines or energy supplies. So for now, the key message is not exactly who pays every dollar. The key message is the water is both necessary infrastructure and possible financing tool. The interview then moved to a broader financing plan. Hot Chili is funded for the next year after the recent capital raise, but the construction financing will be much larger. For the company, the company is looking at several options. Jose Ignacio mentioned royalties, streams, offtakes, strategic partners, and project financing. He also explained that the market today is much more interested in financing copper projects than it was a few years ago. This is because the copper market is very strong. Copper prices are much higher than the prices used in the PFS. The PFS was calculated with copper at $4.30 per pound and gold $2,300 per ounce, but in this interview we're talking a much higher spot copper and gold prices. And the copper price sensitive in this project is very important. When the copper price go up, and if costs remain similar, the impact on project value can be very, very large. This does not mean that investors should value the project only using spot copper prices. That would be too aggressive. But it does explain why the market is paying more attention to copper development projects. Jose Ignacio also spoke about the market for copper concentrates. This is one of the most important macro points in this interview. He explained that the market for concentrates is very strong. There is a lot of interest in offtake, and the treatment and refining charges have changed dramatically. Historically, a mining company sent concentrates to a smelter and paid the smelter to process it. But today, because there is so much smelting capacity and not enough concentrate, the relation has changed. And in some cases, smelters are competing for the concentrate. He gave an example. It's like a person delivering you a pizza paying you a fee to deliver it. that it's not how the system normally works, but it shows how tight the concentrate market has become. This is relevant for hot chili. If Costa Fuego can produce an attractive copper concentrate, and if the concentration market remains tight, then off-take financing could become a very important part of the project financing package. The company also looked for a minority strategic partner. The process is being supported by Bank of Montreal, and José Ignacio did not say who the partner will be. It could be a financial investor, it could be an industrial group, it could be a major mining company. The company is evaluating the different options that have on the table. The key point is that the management wants to close the option that creates the best return for shareholders. A major mining company could bring technical expertise, credibility, and construction knowledge. A financial partner could bring capital and flexibility. An off-take partner could support project finance. A royalty or streaming company could reduce the need for equity, but may also take part of the future upside. There is no perfect structure. The right answer depends on terms. This is one of the most important things to watch over the next year. If Hot Chili brings in a strong strategic partner on good terms, the risk profile of the project could change. The market may begin to believe that Costa Fuego is not only a large project, but a project that could actually be financed and built. The last part of the interview was about the copper cycle, and José Ignacio gave a realistic view. He said that sooner or later the party ends. Mining is cyclical, and copper prices go up, investors become excited, financing becomes easier, and then at some point of the cycle turns. The music stops, the lights go off, and companies that did not build their projects may have to wait for the next cycle. Today, the copper market looks strong. There are not many credible new projects ready to enter to construction, and greenfield exploration is always difficult. The probability of success is low, and it requires a lot of capital and drilling. José Ignacio said that this cycle might be different because the supply response looks weaker than previous cycles. In the past, when copper prices were high, there were many projects waiting to be built. Today, there are fewer credible projects. There are some in Chile, some in Argentina, some in Central Africa, but the pipeline is not easy. Many projects are early stage, very large, technical complex, or difficult, or located in difficult jurisdictions. This is why projects like Costa Fuego might become more important. It's in Chile, it has a scale, it has a study, it has a water strategy, it has exploration upside, it has a potential strategic interest, and it's moving toward permits in a good point of the cycle. But the warning remains. The cycle will not last forever. This is why Hot Chili wants to move now. If the mine is built, then the mine can operate through the cycle. But if the project is not built before the cycle change, it can become stuck, like many others development projects. So, the investment case is now clear. Hot Chili is trying to use the copper window to move Costa Fuego from development to construction. Verde may improve the project. The water business might help financing. The concentrate market may help offtake discussion. A strategic partner may reduce risk, and the political and social environment in Chile might be supportive enough to move forward. But there are also risks. The Verde improvement still needs to be confirmed in formal studies, though their PFS is not yet published. The environmental impact study still needs to be submitted. Permitting still takes time. CapEx always needs to be watched carefully. The water project is promising, but not yet fully monetized, and construction financing for a large copper project is never easier. If I had to summarize the main catalyst, it will start with Verde resource and reserve expected around the middle of the year. That will tell investors how much Verde can really contribute. Then comes to update PFS, expected by the end of the year. That will be a key document that see wherever the economics really move towards the number that management expects. And after that, the environmental impact study expected around the first quarter of 2027 will be one of the most important permitting milestone. Then, investors should watch the water project. Any agreement with the other mining companies, any partners, any monetization event, or any clear financial structure could be very important. Investors should also watch the strategic partner process because the right partner could change the way that the market values the company. And finally, investors need to watch the copper market itself because copper strength and demand for concentrate are one of the paths why Costa Fuego might be more financial today than a few years ago. So, what's the conclusion? Hot Chili is not longer a junior saying that it has a large copper project. It's trying to become one of the next real copper development stories in Chile. Costa Fuego already had a scale, but La Verde may give it something even more important, a strong first phase. If La Verde adds a higher grade near-surface material, improves return, reduces payback, and extends mine life, then the project may move into a more attractive financial category. The water project is also a key differentiator. It's not only a necessary infrastructure, it may become a regional platform, social advantage, and financing tool. In a dry mine region, control of the seawater infrastructure can be strategically very valuable. And the copper cycle gives urgency to the story. The market needs copper. A smelter needs concentrate, but new copper supply is hard to find. Hot Chili wants to move while the window is open. The next 12 to 24 months will decide a lot. If the company delivers La Verde resource, updates the PFF with better economics, advances the environmental impact study, brings the right partners and infrastructures the water project correctly, then the market may stop looking Hot Chili as just another copper junior. It may start looking at as a future copper development with a real path to construction. But as always in mining, the difference between a good story and a real mine is execution. Hot Chili has survived, Costa Fuego has advanced, La Verde has changed the plan, water might change the financing, and copper may give the company the window that it needs. Now the question is simple. Can Hot Chili move fast enough to build the mine before the cycle changes?
Disclaimer: the content in Charlando de Minas is not an investment advice. Amadeo Bonet and his guests are not investment advisors. The authors may have interest in the companies mentioned in this publication. They may also have bias and not be impartial. The information in this publication and all the others in Charlando de Minas is impersonal by nature and should be considered as an entertainment product. The minimum risk of any investment mentioned in this video is 100% of the capital. Before to make any investment decision, contact to a financial or investment advisor or someone qualified with experience. This broadcasts are a narrative of my learnings in the world of commodities and mining investment. In this podcast, we will try to bring experts, professionals, and companies. If you like it, please subscribe. I am Amel Bonet. Welcome to Charlando de Minas.